Alberta Primetime with Michael Higgins.
Welcome to Alberta Primetime. Ahead tonight, our politics panel on Pierre Poilievre's massive rally south of Edmonton. But first, tariffs and market turmoil.
So when I say early days for the fiscal year, obviously this could go a lot of different directions and we'll watch it closely, but we're 1 week in.
Alberta's finance minister isn't hitting the panic button just yet as volatility continues to rock global markets, largely because the government built in a budget baseline tariff assumption of 15% across the board and 10% on energy. So to get a read on market realities and the impact here at home, we're joined now by Moshe Lander, an economics professor with Concordia University and a former senior economist for the government of Alberta. Moshe, good to see you, sir. Welcome back.
Hello.
All right, global markets began showing a bit of a bounce back today, then things shuffled around a little bit more. But how much of a TSN turning point is this after a number of days of steep declines and massive losses?
I think this is just the way that markets go, right? They're not smooth, they're not linear. And every once in a while, what they do is they say, all right, let's recoup some of our losses before they continue the path down. I think everybody in Alberta can appreciate when you come out of the top of the Rocky Mountains, every once in a while, you get those little bumps that show up before you continue your path down. I think that right now we are certainly on the downside of a market that's not going to stop just yet.
Okay, well, with that in mind, given the economic fallout from the tariffs, the subsequent market mayhem, what are you watching for now where prospects for a U.S. or even a global recession are concerned?
It's a very real concern. Normally, when we have the advanced economies showing signs of weakness, it's the emerging economies that can pick up the slack and prevent the globe from falling into recession. The problem is that the Trump administration has gone willy-nilly on tariffs for everybody, including islands of just penguins. So the fact is that nobody's being spared means that it's very likely going to tip most economies into a recession. I don't think that there's anybody out there, including the U.S., that's going to see enough positive growth to prevent the global economy from tipping into a recession unless he backs away from it unequivocally. It can't be one of these, well, let's wait and see, or let's keep everybody guessing for 30 days at a time, the way he did initially with Canada. It has to be walk it back all the way, or it's going to be really difficult for the globe to generate any growth in 2025.
Well, now, outside of the auto sector, aluminum and steel, Canada spared any new tariffs last week, but at what point do Canadians, do Albertans begin to feel the economic pain of what's really developing here? And what does that look like?
Yeah, I didn't like when the premier indicated that somehow we got off easy because we weren't targeted with that poster that he was holding up. We were targeted, just not directly. Don't forget, too, that we were the first countries to experience tariffs placed on us. So the fact that we were excluded from the poster just means that it hadn't gone back from the printer in time when he wanted to race out and trash Canada. But because our trade partners were hit with tariffs as well, that is going to have an effect on us. If our trade partners beyond the U.S. have tariffs, then that means that they're going to suffer job losses. They're not going to produce as many goods, and some of those goods were for us, and so we're not going to be able to find those anymore. It is going to push prices up here, and some of the stuff that we were selling to markets were not necessarily the U.S. markets, and so if their incomes are falling outside of the U.S., they're not going to buy as much stuff, and some of that's going to be Canada, so we're going to suffer job losses. So it's not that Canada got off easy by any means. We were hit just as much as everybody else, and so it is going to do damage to our economy. In terms of how fast we could see it, well, I have a feeling that the Bank of Canada, when they meet next week, are going to give us some guidance as to how fast they're seeing it. Goods that have very short supply lines are going to show those price increases pretty fast.
Is there still time for Donald Trump to pull the plug on tariffs before further economic damage is done? Is there a point of no return?
Well, before further is done, there's always an off-ramp. You can always stop it at any point of your choosing. But I think every country around the world has been very, very clear and unequivocal in what they've stated. This is entirely Trump's doing. We are only counter-tariffing because they tariffed us in the first place. We didn't ask for it. We didn't want it. China's saying the same thing. The European Union is saying the same thing. Everybody's saying the same thing. You knock it off, and all of us will back away from the brink here. But you drew on us first. Everybody has to protect themselves at this point. And so that's why things are escalating, but it really is his choosing.
How worrisome are developments around the price of oil, especially where the differential to Western Canadian Select is concerned?
Well, I think that this was an over-optimistic act by our government to try and present a budget where they thought that the risk of a tariff war was going to be low, that there wasn't going to be any escalation, that the oil price was not going to collapse. So I think from the moment that they presented it, it was wishful thinking. I do know, having gone through that process, that sometimes the number that you put in there is not the number that you truly expect, but the number that you hope for. Remember that if you're going to make all of those spending announcements, you need to know that you're going to have revenue on the other side of the ledger. And sometimes an extra $1 or $2 can be easily justified with a story that maybe the tariffs won't be so bad. Maybe the premier can go and appease the Trump administration so that we can justify the extra $1 or $2. I just don't think that it was realistic from the beginning. But let's also, to be fair to the government, realize that they had to drop that budget 2 months before they presented it. So it's not like they were waiting until the last minute to put those fill in the blanks there. They had to use those numbers to project out what they thought revenues were going to be. It was just an act of over-optimism, though, from the very beginning.
All right, to bring the conversation back full circle, the Economist magazine calls the tariffs move one of the most profound and harmful mistakes of the modern era. At some point, do the markets just adjust to this new U.S. trade dynamic, and Donald Trump eventually gets his way?
Well, they do adjust to it. They're adjusting to it right now. What they're doing is, when they're trying to figure out what the price of a share is worth, they're figuring out what is the expected profits we will see from these companies going forward, and how much do we have to discount them into present value dollars to figure out what the share is worth. What the markets are saying is that they believe that in a lot of sectors around the world, profits are expected to be lower for the foreseeable future. And what they're also expecting is that the discount rate needs to be higher, because there's a much larger risk premium now on a lot of these assets than there were 6 months ago. And so if the numerator is shrinking and the denominator is getting busy, sorry to get all mathematical on you, but it does mean that the fraction is going to fall, and so share prices are falling to reflect the new normal. It's just that we'll now have to live with a tremendous amount of wealth having been wiped out that was completely avoidable.
Indeed. Okay, we'll have to leave it there. Appreciate your time as always, Moshe. Thank you.
Anytime.
Moshe Lander, an economics professor with Concordia University.